The life of Tanjiro Kamado, Demon Slayer. Tanjiro Kamado is the main protagonist of Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba. He's also a Demon Slayer in the Demon Slayer Corps who joined to find a remedy to cure his sister, Nezuko Kamado, who was turned into a demon. Welcome to the Amagi. In today's video, we're going over the life of Tanjiro Kamado. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Background: Tanjiro was born on a mountain as the eldest son of Kie and Tanjiro Kamado, a family of charcoal sellers. After his 5 younger siblings are born, he adopted the idea that as the oldest child, he should be strong and endure any hardships for them. Although the family didn't enjoy a lavish lifestyle, they lived happily and showed a great deal of love and care for one another. When one of his brothers accidentally knocked over a hot kettle, Tanjiro jumped in to protect him, resulting in the burned scar on his forehead. Growing up, Tanjiro learned coal burning techniques and was responsible for selling charcoal in the nearest town in order to earn money for his family. He appeared to frequent the town quite often as the civilians there easily recognized him and regularly asked him for his help. Tanjiro's father was a major influence on him and acted as his teacher for the foundations of the Hinokami Kagura, a ritual dance that was passed down across the family's generations alongside a pair of Hanafuda earrings. And Tanjiro would often watch him perform this dance. Upon asking Tanjiro about his stamina despite the cold weather, Tanjiro learned from his father that there were specific breathing techniques to continue dancing endlessly. When Tanjiro grew old enough to dance in place of his weakening father, he learned that the correct techniques would allow him to blank his mind, enter a plant-like state, and gain access to the see-through world. Before Tanjiro passed away, a night with the threat of a hungry bear prompted him to show Tanjiro the state in action. Tanjiro was frightened at the sight of the predator, but his father quickly killed it with his axe upon entering the state. Tanjiro's abilities shocked him, and Tanjiro made sure to remember the event. Soon after, Tanjiro passed, and Tanjiro's younger siblings began treating him as their father figure. Final Selection Arc. During the Taisho period, Tanjiro lives a modest yet blissful life in the mountains with his family, consisting of his mother and 5 younger siblings. On a snowy morning, Tanjiro prepares to leave for the nearby town and sell charcoal in preparation for the new year. However, his younger sister Hanako Kamado and brother Shigeru Kamado hold him back, begging for him to bring them along. Their mother intercepts and tells them how Tanjiro wouldn't be able to carry them if they were tired. Upon hearing his family's conversation, Takeo Kamado also expresses disappointment and states how he was initially hoping to cut wood with his elder brother that day. Tanjiro bids farewell and starts making for the town. He quickly encounters his sister Nezuko Kamado, who's carrying their youngest brother, Rokota Kamado. Nezuko comments on their siblings' attachment to Tanjiro and sees him off. Upon arriving at the town, Tanjiro holds friendly conversation with the townsfolk, and some ask for his help to perform errands. After spending the afternoon at the town, Tanjiro begins to make his way back home, but is suddenly stopped by a man named Saburo. Saburo requests that the boy stay at his house for the night and warns him of the dangers in the mountains. Although Tanjiro tries to deny the offer, Saburo continues pushing and emphasizes that demons are active during the night. Tanjiro finally relents and listens to Saburo talk about demons as he falls asleep. When Tanjiro makes his way back home the next day, he returns to see an unconscious and wounded Nezuko lying in the snow and shielding Rokota with her arms. Devastated, he realizes that the entirety of his family has been slaughtered, save for Nezuko. Tanjiro picks her up, and while attempting to carry her to the nearest doctor, discovers that she's been transformed into a demon and is promptly attacked by her. Tanjiro struggles to fend off his demon-turned sister and is overwhelmed by her strength, narrowly managing to block her attack with the handle of his axe. As Nezuko begins to grow in size and overpower him, Tanjiro internally apologizes to his family for the suffering they must have felt during their last moments, and begs his sister to retain her humanity. Upon hearing her brother's words, Nezuko begins to cry. The siblings are suddenly interrupted by the arrival of Giyu Tomioka, who attacks Nezuko from behind, only for his attempt to fail when Tanjiro moves her out of the way. Recovering quickly, the swordsman asks Tanjiro why he protected the demon, and he desperately replies that the creature is his sister. Looking at the maddened Nezuko, Giyu questions this statement before swiftly removing the girl from her brother's grip. As Tanjiro calls out to Nezuko in alarm, Giyu tells him not to move and states that it's his job to kill demons. He listens to Tanjiro's attempt to defend his sister and explain their current predicament. As Tanjiro expresses his confusion with Nezuko's transformation, Giyu comments that her change is simple to explain. Any open wound bathed in demon blood causes that person to become a demon themselves, thus increasing their overall numbers. Tanjiro exclaims that his sister hasn't eaten any people, but Gyu reminds him that she just attacked previously and bluntly tells him that there's no way to cure a person once they're turned into a demon, despite Tanjiro's plea to the contrary. As Tanjiro begins begging for his sister's release, Gyu brings his sword up to Nezuko's throat. Tanjiro then bows before the swordsman and begs him to spare his sister's life. Gyu grows angry and yells that Tanjiro has no authority over who lives and who dies, given he was too weak to protect even his own family. He labels all his talk about finding a cure for his sister's condition and his family's killer ridiculous, as neither he nor the Demon Lord would have any respect for such a miserable display. Gyu demands that Tanjiro prove his dedication to protecting his sister by drawing his axe. While Tanjiro hesitates upon hearing these words, Gyu silently encourages him to find the resolve necessary to accomplish all of the lofty goals that he had placed upon himself. He then stabs Nezuko in the chest, causing Tanjiro to throw a stone at him in fury. Gyu blocks the stone with the hilt of his sword and avoids another one of the projectiles as Tanjiro charges at him empty-handed. Seeing the attack attempt as only a simple act of emotion, the swordsman angrily drives the hilt of his sword into Tanjiro's back, knocking him out. Staring down at the fallen boy, Gyu realizes his opponent's axe was missing and looks up to see the weapon spinning towards him through the air. He muses over Tanjiro's clever strategy and realizes the boy's plan was to defeat him with the flying axe after he was knocked out. Distracted, the swordsman is attacked by Nezuko, and he dodges backwards from her kick. Cursing himself, Gyu watches as the girl reaches for her brother, certain that she was going to devour him. To his surprise, she instead stands protectively in front of his vulnerable body before charging at Gyu in rage. Gyu recalls Tanjiro's previous statement that Nezuko wouldn't eat humans, noting that somebody a long time ago had said the same thing and had been killed regardless. Seeing that Nezuko wasn't following this example, Gyu sheaths his sword and incapacitates the unusual demon with a bare-handed blow to the neck. While Tanjiro and Nezuko are unconscious, Gyu wraps the latter in a clean cloth and straps a bamboo muzzle-like tube across her mouth. When Tanjiro wakes up after seeing a vision of his deceased mother and siblings, Gyu instructs him to visit a man named Sakonji Orokodaki at Sagiri Mountain, and to not take his sister out in the sun, vanishing swiftly afterwards. A surprised Tanjiro watches him leave, and he takes Nezuko to dig graves to bury their family and pray for their souls in the afterlife. The pair then leave their home and head towards Sagiri Mountain. Later that day, Tanjiro hides Nezuko in a small cave entrance and goes to the nearby farm to buy a broken basket plus straw and bamboo, comically insisting on paying as the owner was willing to give him the materials for free. Reaching the cave entrance, Tanjiro quickly assembles a basket large enough to carry Nezuko on his back, with a little help from her shrinking abilities. Near sunset, Tanjiro is told by a villager that to reach Sagiri Mountain, he would need to pass through a perilous mountain where people were disappearing. Unafraid, he ignores the warning and encounters a way station with lights on, immediately smelling blood. He goes inside to check in case there were harmed travelers, but instead encounters a demon feasting on 3 humans he had just killed. When the demon notices him, he senses something odd but nevertheless jumps on Tanjiro and tries to strangle him. Nezuko avoids the instinct to eat the human flesh in front of her and kicks the demon's head off, saving her brother. Even without a head, the demon still commands its body to attack and grows a pair of arms on its head, much to Tanjiro's shock. As the body furiously attacks Nezuko, Tanjiro headbutts the head twice in order to get an opening and pins him to a tree nearby. With half of the demon restrained, Tanjiro goes to help Nezuko by tackling the body of the demon and throwing it off a cliff. Although Tanjiro nearly falls off as well, Nezuko is able to catch him in time. Despite the excruciating pain caused from the destruction of his body, the demon doesn't die. Tanjiro realizes the demon pinned in front of him smells different from the one he sensed in their house, and concludes his family's murderer was someone different. As Tanjiro prepares to kill the demon with his knife, the hand of a figure wearing a Tengu mask touches his shoulder and tells him he would be unable to end the demon's life with such a blunt weapon. Tanjiro questions the man on how to properly kill a demon, but he's told that he would need to figure it out himself. To the man's disappointment, Tanjiro is too compassionate and overthinks, accidentally letting the demon perish by the sun's first rays. After watching the demon's death, Tanjiro notices the man already giving a proper burial to the demon's victims. The masked man introduces himself as Sakonji Urokodaki and asks if Tanjiro was the one Gyu spoke of in his letter, to which Tanjiro confirms. Sakonji follows his question by scolding Tanjiro for his inability to make quick decisions and slaps him when he hesitates to reply about what he would do if his sister decided to consume human flesh. Sakonji states that Tanjiro lacks resolution, stressing that he must not allow his sister to harm another human under any circumstances, else he should kill both her and himself. Sakonji then tells Tanjiro to follow him, saying that he would be tested to see if he would fit the role of a demon slayer. On their path, Tanjiro, while carrying Nezuko on his back, feels short-winded rapidly. Sakonji, despite appearing to be much older than him, keeps an extremely fast pace with his steps seemingly soundless. Glimpses of Tanjiro's past strike his mind as they arrive at Sakonji's house. All worn out, Tanjiro questions if he had passed the test, in which Sakonji replies that the test had just begun at that moment as the two start ascending a mountain. While the pair scale the mountain, Tanjiro notices the thinness of the air and thick fog covering their sight. When they reach the top, Tanjiro becomes dizzy and feels weakness in his legs. Sakonji tells him to climb down to the house at the foot of the mountain by dawn, vanishing in the fog afterwards. Tanjiro, confident in his sense of smell, easily begins descending as he had memorized Sakonji's scent. However, he immediately encounters several traps, including tripwire triggering rock throwers, ramming wood trunks, and covered pits. Tanjiro notices he's running out of air quickly due to the altitude of the mountain and begins focusing on his breathing. A heavily exhausted and injured Tanjiro manages to reach the house before dawn, and, confirming Tanjiro's passage of the test, Sakonji accepts him as his student. After Tanjiro wakes up, Sakonji explains his profession as a cultivator, as well as how to join the Demon Slayer Corps, survive the final selection held at Fujikasane Mountain. To prepare him for his trial, Sakonji begins to train Tanjiro in the way of the sword. Tanjiro's training consists of regimens focusing to practice different skills a core swordsman should have. For endurance, Tanjiro would make his way up and down the mountain on a daily basis, improving his ability to evade traps and sharpening his nose, with Sakonji slowly increasing the danger levels of the traps to the point where Tanjiro thought his teacher wanted to kill him. For swordsmanship, Sakonji starts making him perform the same endurance process as before, but instead wielding a katana as a way for him to start thinking of it as part of his own body. After descending the mountain, Tanjiro stands at the foot of the mountain and swings his sword several times until he felt like his arms would fall off. Next, Tanjiro learns from Sakonji about the intricacies of the weapon and the forces behind it as he starts slashing bamboo poles to train aiming and precision. For combat practice, Tanjiro learns how to break his fall and get up quickly with his katana as he spars with an unarmed Sakonji. For breathing, Tanjiro learns the proper forms of breathing, receiving blows to the stomach from his teacher when he fails to get it right. At some point after the training begins, Nezuko falls into an endless slumber, deeply worrying Tanjiro. Sakonji attempts to call a doctor, but he's told there isn't anything wrong with her. Tanjiro feels an uneasiness that when he wakes up one day, his sister might be dead. He keeps a journal which he writes in daily to remember what he learns from Sakonji and to also serve as something Nezuko can read when she finally wakes up. Finally, after a year passes, Sakonji tells Tanjiro that there's nothing left to teach him and instructs him to prove himself by working upon the basics he had been taught. He leads the boy to a giant boulder and tells him that if he can split it in half with his sword, he would be permitted to participate in the final selection. While Tanjiro hesitates, overcome with doubt, Sakonji leaves without a word, his hand in the boy's training completed. Tanjiro starts training by his own harder and harder for half a year, but is still not successful. One day, while thinking his skills weren't enough, Tanjiro headbutts the boulder in desperation. A boy with a fox mask appears on the top of the boulder and shouts at him to be silent, scolding him for his whining. A surprised Tanjiro notices that he appeared out of nowhere, and he didn't detect his smell. The boy proceeds to attack Tanjiro with a wooden sword, which the latter defends against using the hilt of his sword. Despite wielding a real sword compared to the wooden sword, Tanjiro is overwhelmed from the attacks and receives insults from the boy, who knocks him out after a short fight. A girl with a fox mask is present next to Tanjiro as he wakes up. She asks him if he's alright, but Tanjiro is too impressed by the fox masked boy's combat skills to respond. The girl proceeds to assure Tanjiro that she would watch over him and help him improve his techniques. She clarifies her name is Makomo, and the boy's name is Sabito. For the next few days, Makomo spends time pointing out the defects and correcting the unnecessary movements in Tanjiro's technique. Tanjiro comes to know that Makomo and Sabito were not siblings, and they were raised by Sakonji along with other children who Makomo implies have been watching over Tanjiro as well. She instructs Tanjiro about the concept of the total concentration breathing technique. By expanding his lungs and bringing more air into his bloodstream, his temperature would shoot up and his heartbeat would accelerate to become as strong as a demon. Tanjiro also learns how to smell out an opening thread that goes from his blade to a spot on his opponent. Once he can see this thread, a slash can be made perfectly. For 6 months, Tanjiro uses what he learned with Makomo to spar against Sabito, but is defeated many times. One day, a longer-haired Tanjiro faces Sabito, the latter who finally wields a real sword. They perform the simplest contest. The faster blade would win. For the first time ever, Tanjiro's blade reaches Sabito's mask and splits it in half, revealing Sabito's face. He holds a sad smile and fades away alongside Makomo. After they disappear, Tanjiro realizes he had not just split the mask, but also the boulder. Tanjiro is praised by Sakonji while also being told that Sakonji actually didn't want him to participate in the final selection, lest he'd risk another one of his children being killed. Tanjiro cries as they hug, and Sakonji urges him to come back alive. Sakonji cuts Tanjiro's hair and gives him a white mask resembling a fox with a sun symbol in the same place Tanjiro had his mark as a way to ward off evil. While leaving, Tanjiro tells Sakonji to give his best to Makomo and Sabito, surprising Sakonji with the fact his student knew the names of his long-deceased students. Tanjiro arrives at Fujikasane Mountain and gathers around with the other contestants. A young boy with black hair and a young girl with white hair walk in and explain that demons hate wisteria flowers, which grow abundantly until this area, even out of season. From this point on, there would be no more wisteria, and demons captured by the core roam free. Their trial is very straightforward. Survive for 7 days. With determination, Tanjiro and the others march ahead. Two demons immediately start assaulting Tanjiro, but he quickly smells the opening thread while avoiding their advances and seizes the opportunity to decapitate both in a single strike. Sakonji had bestowed upon Tanjiro a special sword called the Nichiren Blade, which, at the decapitation of the demon, would crumble its corpse, preventing it from regenerating and effectively killing it. Tanjiro smells a rotten scent when praying for the souls of the demons he had just killed. Advancing closer to the center of the scent, Tanjiro finds a fellow contestant running away from a giant demon with several hands swirled over its body. The demon tries to kill the contestant, but Tanjiro pushes himself to act and unleashes the water-breathing second form, Water Wheel, saving the boy. The demon recognizes Tanjiro as Orokudaki's student by his fox mask. The demon questions Tanjiro regarding current affairs to establish which period of time he was in. Upon discovering 47 years had passed since his capture by the hands of Sakonji during his time in the Demon Slayer Corps in the Edo period, the demon becomes furious. The contestant refutes such a fact, stating that no demon there should be that old. However, the demon replies that not only had he survived for so long, he had also killed 50 people in his life, including 13 students of Sakonji, referring to Sabito and Makomo as notably strong victims, and implying Tanjiro would be the 14th. Tanjiro recalls Sakonji teaching him that the strength level of a demon is proportional to the number of humans it had eaten. Tanjiro notes his sense of smell had developed to the point where he can detect the strength level of the demon by its decaying scent, explaining the rotten smell felt before. As the demon starts describing how it killed both Sabito and Makomo, Tanjiro starts breathing heavily. In an angry response, he charges at the demon, slicing several of his arms, but is hit by a hook punch on his ribcage and thrown in the nearby tree, hitting his head and fainting. Tanjiro hears a call to waken from one of his deceased brothers while unconscious, regaining consciousness in the nick of time and dodging the demon's onslaught. Tanjiro suddenly leaps very high in response to smelling the demon's hands underground. While in midair, the demon tries to take advantage and strike him down, but Tanjiro uses an improvised headbutt in defense, rolling forwards and positioning himself in range of the demon's head. Tanjiro uses the water-breathing first form, Water Surface Slash, and decapitates the demon. Contrary to the demon's belief that Tanjiro would feel disdain towards its existence, the young swordsman feels sorrow holding the hand of the demon while its corpse crumbled, praying for God to not let it become the demon again when it reincarnates. Tanjiro thinks to himself that all children trained under Sakonji that perished could be at ease now. On the morning of the 7th day, Tanjiro and 3 other contestants are congratulated for having survived the trial. One fellow contestant seems aloof, another is still frightened about the trial he had just passed, and the last one questions when they would get their official Nichiren blades. The 2 children introduce the Demon Slayer uniforms and the ranking system ranging from the lowest to highest rank, in which the final selection survivors were of the lowest. A Kasugai Garasu is provided, which would fulfill the task of following the new demon hunters at all times for communication purposes, and a crow lands on Tanjiro's shoulder. Out of impatience for receiving his blade, survivor Genya Shinazugawa hits Kanata Ubuyashiki, one of the spokespersons. This prompts Tanjiro to roughly grab his arm and ask for him to calm down. The boy doesn't comply, and Tanjiro breaks his arm in the process. Afterwards, each survivor is asked to choose an alloy for the Nichiren blade to be forged from. Sometime later, Tanjiro climbs down Fujikasane Mountain feeling a wave of weariness, his body in pain from the fatigue he had sustained from the trial, with even the new uniform appearing too heavy for him to carry. Tanjiro is troubled by his emotions for not being able to hold a conversation with any of the demons before killing them, and thus losing the chance to ask about a way to turn a demon back to a human. A weary, grimy, and bandage-covered Tanjiro, using a stick as a crutch, eventually arrives back at Sakonji's house. As he makes his way towards the entrance, he suddenly hears the front door being knocked down from the inside. Nezuko walks out the house, much to Tanjiro's surprise of the awakening from her slumber. Tanjiro tries to reach her but falls to the ground out of exhaustion. Nezuko immediately picks him up and embraces him as Tanjiro starts crying out of relief. In the tenderness of the moment, Sakonji appears and embraces them both, weeping out of happiness that Tanjiro came back alive. 15 days later, Tanjiro sights at the entrance of the house a man with a large woven hat with floral wind chimes hanging from it, covering his face. The man tells Tanjiro he's called Haganezka, and he had forged the blade which would be used by Tanjiro. The young boy also introduces himself, inviting Haganezka to come into the house and have tea, but is ignored, and the swordsman sits on the ground, unwrapping the Nichiren blade. Haganezka explains to Tanjiro the origins of the Nichiren blade forging. Tanjiro still shows concern about Haganezka being on the floor, as his belongings would get muddy, but he's again ignored. Haganezka suddenly lifts his head towards Tanjiro, revealing the Hyotoko mask he wore, similar to Sakonji's mask. Once Haganezka realizes Tanjiro had red hair and eyes, he calls him the Child of Burning Crimson, much to Tanjiro's confusion. Inside the house, Haganezka explains that the blade changes color after being pulled from the scabbard, hinting that by Tanjiro's features, he might finally see a blade turning bright red. Tanjiro unsheaths the sword and the blade turned black, much to the frustration of Haganezka. Sakonji comments on how he'd never seen the shade of black, and Haganezka jumps on Tanjiro, blaming him for not receiving the chance to see a red blade. In that instant, Tanjiro's crows alert him to go on his first mission to hunt demons. First Mission Arc. At some time, Tanjiro equips himself with a standard Demon Slayer uniform under his checkered haori. Sakonji explains to his pupil that the outfit he's wearing was made from a special kind of fiber. The fabric is designed to be breathable, moisture-repelling, and non-flammable. It's strong enough to withstand low-level demon fangs and talons. As for Tanjiro's Nichiren blade, it's stated that not much is known about its unique properties since not many people wield black swords. However, it's implied that few black blade wielders have managed to survive as long as others. Tanjiro brushes it off since he's going to do everything in his power to revert his sister to a human again, regardless of what color blade he had. To ease his travels, Sakonji gives Tanjiro a large custom-made box for Nezuko to rest in during the day. The materials were handcrafted out using an extremely light wood called Cloud Mist Pine, coated with a rock lacquer to reinforce the exterior and durability. Tanjiro expresses his gratitude to his master and proceeds to instruct Nezuko to enter the box. Right before Tanjiro disembarks on his journey as a demon slayer, Sakonji straightens his pupil's clothes and bids him farewell. Upon sundown, Kazumi questions Tanjiro if they should rest for the night and continue their search tomorrow. The demon slayer refutes, stating that it's because those creatures are active during the night, he can't afford to rest. Tanjiro kneels closer to the ground, picking a new scent at their current location. He speculates that the demon he's looking for is somewhere nearby. At this point, Kazumi deduces that Tanjiro might be an actual demon slayer and that demons do exist. After confirming it was, in fact, a demon, Tanjiro sprints past Kazumi and towards the source of the scent. Kazumi gets stunned by Tanjiro's speed and soon follows him, but falls far behind. Tanjiro yells out that a demon's at large before jumping onto a nearby rooftop. Hearing that demons do exist, Kazumi confirms that Tanjiro is in fact a demon slayer. Arriving at the source of the scent, Tanjiro hops off the roof and lands in an alleyway. He draws his sword, readying himself for battle. Tanjiro detects two different scents, a demon and a female human. Despite the fact that no one was in sight, he could tell that two were in fact underground. After finding the exact spot where the demon's scent is strongest at, Tanjiro proceeds to thrust his blade into the ground. Wounding the demon, a pocket swap dimension opens up, revealing the girl trapped inside. Tanjiro immediately sticks his hand into the swamp, grabs the unnamed girl, and pulls her out. A demon's hand sticks out from the ground, holding a torn piece of clothing from the unnamed girl's sleeve. The creature pulls his upper body out of the swamp, revealing himself to the demon slayer. Tanjiro confirms that the swamp demon is capable of using blood demon arts. As the wound on the swamp demon's arm rapidly heals, Tanjiro questions where he was keeping the girls captive. The swamp demon doesn't answer. Instead, he grinds his teeth, which is honestly the worst sound I've ever seen and kind of a gross visual, just saying. But he grinds his teeth before sinking back into the swamp. Kazumi arrives in time to see the swamp demon disappear into the ground. Tanjiro promptly asks for Kazumi to hold the girl and for the both of them to stay close to him for their protection. Tanjiro attempts to use the scent of the demon to detect where it was. While he was able to pinpoint the location and prepared to use the fifth form, he was surprised by the emergence of the three bodies of the swamp demon. Switching to the eighth form, Tanjiro manages to hit all three. However, none of the wounds were fatal since he switched forms, as seen when he was only able to cut off the arms of the swamp demon. The three bodies submerge once again, allowing him to jump back to Kazumi's side and regroup. Tanjiro is able to wound the shoulder of the swamp demon again, however the cut was again too shallow. Eventually, Tanjiro would go on to defeat the swamp demon and solve the case of the mysterious missing girls. Asakusa Arc. Tanjiro ventures to Asakusa, Tokyo for his second mission with the Demon Slayer Corps. The big city of Tokyo is new to the village boy. He's to track down a demon disturbance in the area, but early into his assignment, Tanjiro notices an all-too-familiar scent. He frantically rushes into the crowded streets and discovers Muzan Kibutsuji masquerading as a human with a family. To escape the situation, Muzan transforms a man into a demon and flees with his family as Tanjiro deals with the new demon. This gains the attention of Lady Tamayo and a young boy named Yushiro. They dispel the situation and bring Tanjiro back to their secret house where Tamayo, a demon doctor, treats patients. Yushiro is a demon as well, and they're trying to eliminate Muzan. Tamayo and Tanjiro agree to help manufacture a cure for demons by studying Nezuko's blood and the blood of demons close to Muzan. Lord Muzan's assassins interrupt the meeting, claiming to be members of the 12 Kizuki, and unleash a furious assault on the house using Tamari and arrow spells. Tanjiro takes on the arrow demon while the others play a deadly game of handball with the Tamari demon. Tanjiro is able to eliminate Yahaba by combining multiple water-breathing forms, but he's exhausted from the fight. Nezuko and Yushiro are able to hold Susumaru off, but she's ultimately too powerful for them. In order to stop the situation from escalating, Tamayo uses a spell that triggers Muzan's curse inside Susumaru. The Tamari demon falls victim to the curse and dies, leaving a scarred image in Tanjiro's head. After the battle, Tamayo and Yushiro decide to leave the area. Nezuko sees them both as her human family, moving both Tamayo and Yushiro. They bid farewell, and Tanjiro leaves the city for his next assignment to the south-southeast. Tsuzumi Mansion Arc. Tanjiro ventures to the south-southeast, where he encounters a cowardly young man named Zenitsu Agatsuma. He's a fellow survivor from Final Selection, and his sparrow asks Tanjiro to help keep him in line. Together, Tanjiro and Zenitsu venture up a mountain where they find a mysterious house. They meet Shoichi and Teruko, two small children whose brother was abducted and taken into the house. The sound of a Tsuzumi echoes through the mansion every so often, and it all belongs to a demon. Tanjiro and Zenitsu head into the house but are separated shortly after, tasked with protecting one of the children each. Zenitsu accidentally discovers another young demon slayer who wears a boar hide as a mask. The wild boar Inosuke charges through the house trying to slay the same demon as the others. Inosuke and Tanjiro come to blows with the Tsuzumi demon controlling the house. They're both eventually transported away while Zenitsu and Shoichi are chased throughout the house by the tongue demon. Tanjiro and Teruko locate Kiyoshi and learn the demons wish to eat him because he possesses rare Marechi blood. Tanjiro and Kyogai come face to face again in a battle where Kyogai constantly changes the orientation of the room using his blood demon art. At first, Tanjiro struggles due to the injuries he sustained in Asakusa. After regaining his spirit, Tanjiro is able to adapt to the changes by changing the form of his own water techniques. He sees fit not to trample on Kyogai's writing, and even compliments his blood demon art before severing his head. Kyogai dies in peace knowing his talents were acknowledged by someone. Everyone regroups outside where Inosuke comes to blows with Tanjiro and Zenitsu over Nezuko's box. Inosuke tries to slay the demon without understanding the situation. Even though Zenitsu is in the same boat, he tries his best to protect the box for Tanjiro. Tanjiro had mentioned earlier that this box was more precious than his own life. Tanjiro and Inosuke get into a ferocious bare-knuckle brawl that ends with Tanjiro giving the wild boar a concussion with his rock-hard head. The demon slayers and the children go their separate ways, and the new trio recovers at the house with the Wisteria family crest. There, they get to know each other and clash personalities. Nezuko also reveals herself, and Zenitsu learns the truth about why Tanjiro is traveling with a demon. Natagumo Mountain Arc. Their next destination is to the north-northwest. Tanjiro and Nezuko head towards Mount Natagumo with Zenitsu and Inosuke. This mountain is covered with spiderwebs and is swarming with innumerable spiders. Leaving carrying Zenitsu behind, Tanjiro and Inosuke head up the mountain where they run into fellow demon slayers entangled in spiderwebs. Further up the mountain, Tanjiro and Inosuke get into a scuffle with the father spider demon and are separated in battle. Tanjiro and Nezuko then encounter Rui, the true head of the spider demon family. Tanjiro claims that what Rui's doing is wrong and that his family is fake. This angers Rui and they continue their battle. Despite Tanjiro and Nezuko's best efforts and super flashy scenes that went viral honestly, Rui stays standing. However, Giyu Tomioka, one of the Hashira, arrives and quickly finishes off Rui. Rehabilitation Training Arc. Tanjiro is brought before the Hashira and put on trial for traveling with his demon sister Nezuko. Tanjiro tries to explain his situation, but the Hashira don't accept it. All except for Giyu, who also broke the rules by protecting Nezuko. The Wind Hashira refutes Tanjiro the most, and even harms Nezuko for being a demon. The master of the mansion, Kagaya Ubuyashiki, arrives and asks the Hashira to pardon the Kamado siblings. A letter was sent from Sakonji explaining the situation and asking for the Demon Slayer Corps to look past this. The Hashira still outright refuse, and Sanemi tries to prove Nezuko as an evil demon by baiting her with his own blood. However, Nezuko refuses despite her injuries and proves she won't harm humans. Following the conclusion of the trial, Shinobu brings Tanjiro and Nezuko to the Butterfly Mansion, where Zenitsu and Inosuke are also healing their wounds. The Hashira commence their council with Master Kaguya, while the other demon slayers heal. After their injuries are sufficiently healed, Tanjiro and the boys endure rehabilitation training under the tutelage of Aoi and Kanao. Tanjiro also learns about Shinobu's past with a demon who killed her sister. Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke struggle with training at first, unable to beat Kanao in any form or capacity. Eventually, the boys regain their stamina and master total concentration constant, the ability to use the breathing technique all day and night long. With their training complete, Tanjiro's group heads west to join the Flame Hashira for the train mission. Meanwhile, Muzan dismantles the lower ranks and continues his schemes to crush the Demon Slayer Corps. Mugen Train Arc. Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke buy tickets for the Infinity Train in search of Kyojuro Rengoku, the Flame Hashira. Tanjiro hopes he has some info on the Hinokami Kagura. Kyojuro informs them that he was sent on a mission to kill a demon suspected to be the cause for multiple disappearances on the train. He informs Tanjiro that unfortunately, he knows nothing of the Hinokami Kagura. He quickly senses a demon and kills it. The group, impressed by his skills, asks that he makes them his Sukukos, and Kyojuro accepts. The trio and Kyojuro fall asleep, and Enmu enlists the help of 5 civilians riding the train with severe insomnia. One of them is the train's conductor, who follows Enmu in order to dream of his late wife and child. Enmu promises to use his powers to give each of them heartwarming, sweet dreams in exchange for their help in carrying out his plan to kill the Demon Slayers. The group had already touched Enmu's blood by taking hold of their tickets, putting the first act of the plan into motion. The conductor is put to sleep as a reward for his work, and the remaining 4 are sent to carry out the rest of the plan. As they sleep, the group fall into vivid dreams as an effect of touching the tickets. Zenitsu dreams of being on a date with Nezuko. Inosuke dreams of being a cave explorer with Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Nezuko as his animal minions. Meanwhile, Tanjiro dreams of being back together with his family. Enmu's minions work on connecting themselves to the group's dreams through a rope with a special spell that enables them to penetrate the dreams of others, completing the second stage of Enmu's plan. Meanwhile, Tanjiro carries out his dream while receiving more and more unconscious cues from his mind, such as seeing Nezuko's box and being told by a mirror image of himself in a Demon Slayer uniform that he's experiencing a dream. At the same time, Nezuko wakes up and exits her box, after being confused by Kyojiro's actions before attempting to wake up Tanjiro, but to no avail. Annoyed, she headbutts Tanjiro but ends up splitting her head and starts bleeding due to Tanjiro's comically hard forehead. She then uses her blood demon art, which engulfs his real and dream body in flames, which allows him to slowly wake up and get back his sword and uniform. Tanjiro immediately takes off to confront the demon Enmu, and Enmu reveals the method for putting everyone to sleep. Enmu then attempts to put Tanjiro to sleep. However, every time Tanjiro falls asleep, he immediately kills himself in his dream to wake himself up. Tanjiro does so up until he's able to cut off Enmu's head. However, Enmu reveals that he's fused to the train itself. Tanjiro, feeling that he won't be able to protect no more than 2 train carriages, calls out for everyone to wake up and help. Inosuke is the first to react, followed by Zenitsu, then Kyojuro. Tanjiro moves in to meet with Kyojuro, who immediately assesses the situation and tells Tanjiro that no matter what shape a demon's in, they always have a neck. Kyojuro then shoots off towards his target, while Tanjiro and Inosuke follow. Tanjiro and Inosuke reach the engine room and discover Enmu's neckbone. However, Enmu blocks their attacks and counterattacks with eyes that make Tanjiro and Inosuke fall asleep. Tanjiro, already knowing the trick to waking up, tells Inosuke that he has to die in his dreams to wake up. Tanjiro keeps waking himself up, but is saved by Inosuke after almost falling for one of Enmu's traps and killing himself in real life. The conductor stabs Tanjiro in an attempt to stop the duo from doing away with Enmu, but despite his best attempts, the two successfully cut through Enmu's neck. As Enmu dies, Tanjiro's wound inflicted by the conductor worries him as it might kill him, making the conductor a murderer, which Tanjiro doesn't want. Kyojuro goes to Tanjiro and tells him that in order to stop the hemorrhage, he must focus his mind. Suddenly, the two are met by another demon, Upper Moon 3, Akaza. Tanjiro watches as the two are in the heat of battle, but can't seem to follow their movements. Akaza taunts Kyojiro, and Kyojiro launches a ferocious attack, only to be stabbed in the chest by Akaza's right arm. Although impaled, literally right through the chest, Kyojiro tries to cut off Akaza's head, but isn't able to cut through the demon's neck. Inosuke attempts to help, but Akaza is able to pull free from Kyojiro and runs away. Tanjiro, upset at what had just transpired, gives chase to Akaza and throws his sword, exclaiming that it's Akaza who was the loser in this battle. However, Kyojiro, really harmed at this point, calls Tanjiro over and tells him that it is he who is the loser in this battle. He also tells him that there may be some record of the Dance of the Fire God at the Rengoku household. He continues on to say that he believes in Tanjiro and his sister before he succumbs to his wounds and dies. Tanjiro travels to the Rengoku house to visit and sees Senjiro with a pale expression on his face. He's then rudely interrupted by the boy's father, Shinjiro, who calls Kyojiro a talentless swordsman. As the Rengoku father continues to badmouth both his sons, he notices Tanjiro's earrings, a symbol of the user of the Breath of the Sun, the breathing style which all other styles originate from. Shinjiro assumes that Tanjiro is only here to look down upon his household, but Tanjiro clearly doesn't know what Shinjiro is talking about, as he really doesn't know what the Breath of the Sun is. Tanjiro attempts to attack Shinjiro for bad-mouthing Kyujiro, but Senjiro tells Tanjiro that Shujiro was a former pillar. Tanjiro laments that if the Breath of the Sun was such a great style, why wasn't it enough to save Kyujiro? Tanjiro goes with Senjiro to look at the Flame Hashira's records, but the both of them are surprised to find that parts of it had been destroyed. The two continue to chat, and Senjiro decides that Tanjiro should have the sword guard that once belonged to Kyujiro. As Tanjiro leaves the house, Haganezuka appears and approaches Tanjiro, angry that the latter had lost his sword. Entertainment District Arc. Tanjiro, Inosuke, and Zenitsu accompany the Sound Hashira, Tengen, on a mission to Yoshiwara to help search for his missing wives who were investigating rumors of demons within the district. The trio are to disguise themselves and infiltrate each of the households to help find Tengen's 3 wives. Tanjiro is sent to the Tokito house, Inosuke to Ogimoto's, and Zenitsu to the Kyogoku house. While at the Tokito house, Tanjiro converses with the women there, including the Oiran of the household. As he continues to work at the household, he smells impurity in the air, the smell of a demon, Upper Moon 6, Daki specifically. Tanjiro, Inosuke, and Tengen convene and discuss their observations. Tengen informs the two that he's lost communication with Zenitsu and that he'll proceed with the mission as though Zenitsu has died. He also tells them that they shouldn't continue on their mission as they're lower ranked. Tanjiro believes that Tengen's acting this way because they're the lowest ranking demon slayers, which Inosuke refutes by telling them that they've actually ranked up. The two, with new resolve, decide to continue the mission as they believe that Zenitsu and Tengen's 3 wives are still alive somewhere. Tanjiro goes back to the Takito house to inform Koinatsu that he's no longer staying at the household, while also revealing that he was a boy all along, to which Koinatsu replies that she knew all along. Koinatsu tells Tanjiro that she was actually picked to be a wife, and that it was her final night at the house anyway. They both bid each other farewell, and Tanjiro leaves. However, as he's on his way out, he smells a demon close by, and decides to return to Koinatsu. There, he finds that Daki has infiltrated the room, with the intention to eat Koinatsu. Tanjiro attempts to stop the demon only to feel her power when she attacks. Daki jumps towards Tanjiro and goes in for the attack, however Tanjiro counters and cuts off a part of Daki's sash that's keeping Koinatsu imprisoned. Daki is surprised by the precision Tanjiro has, and the latter readies for battle. Daki taunts Tanjiro, even pointing out that Tanjiro's blade is already chipped, to which Tanjiro responds by telling her that his sword was made by the greatest swordsman. The two then battle. Tanjiro believes that the Breath of the Water style isn't suited for him, and so he decides that, since he's trained hard, he should be able to use Dance of the Fire God because of its compatibility with his body. Daki's sash, which once separated from her body, returns and she attacks the town, injuring several in the process. Tanjiro, angered, goes on to continue his battle with Daki. On the rooftop, Tanjiro continues his attacks using the Dance of the Fire God. Despite her best efforts, Tanjiro manages to close the gap between the two and nearly cuts off Daki's head. However, she's able to keep herself together thanks to her sash. As the battle continues, Tanjiro quickly runs out of stamina and is unable to continue. Daki approaches Tanjiro, ready to deliver the final blow, only to have her face split in half by a kick from Nezuko. Nezuko continues the fight as Tanjiro lays unconscious, the inner voices of his deceased siblings telling him to wake up and save their sister from progressing further into a demon. Tanjiro awakens and stops Nezuko from feeding off a human. As the two sit there, Daki, injured from her scuffle with Nezuko, approaches the two. Daki's head is suddenly cut off by Tengen, who arrives at the scene. Tengen informs Tanjiro that he must quell her sister's rampage since the fight isn't over yet. Suddenly, a crying Daki releases her brother Gyutaro, the true holder of the Upper Moon's 6th title. Tengen prepares for a fight against this demon as Tanjiro puts Nezuko back in her box. With Nezuko put away, Tanjiro rejoins the fight. The battle intensifies with Tanjiro and Tengen chipping away against Gyutaro's offensive. Gyutaro then attacks Tengen and leaves him incapacitated and goes to save his sister. He impales Inosuke with one of his sickle attacks. Devastated by what had just happened in front of his eyes and distracted, Tanjiro is hit by an attack by Gyutaro and is momentarily knocked unconscious. When he comes to, he's greeted by Gyutaro, who offers him a chance to become a demon. Tanjiro responds by headbutting the crap out of Gyutaro, with Hinatsuri's poison taking effect just in time. Tanjiro goes in for the killing slice but is unable to cut through Gyutaro's neck. Gyutaro takes this moment to stab Tanjiro through the mouth with his sickle, poisoning him in the process, which is really gross. It's like the mouth right under the tongue. It's so nasty. God, don't want to see that animated. Anyway, with the power of his entire body, Tanjiro pushes it to the limit and manages to slice Gyutaro's head off. At the same time, Zenitsu and Inosuke do the same with Daki. With the siblings decapitated, the area becomes very dangerous, and energy pulsates through it. This causes Tengen to tell everyone to run away. The poison inflicted on Tanjiro and Tengen start to take effect on their bodies, but Nezuko uses her blood demon art to heal them. In the distance, the crew hear the two demon heads bickering. Their arguing saddens Tanjiro, so Tanjiro goes on to console the pair, putting them at ease, even in the face of death, as he always does. Swordsmith Village Arc. In a dream, Tanjiro sees his ancestor, Sumiyoshi, bringing tea to a mysterious long-haired man who is sitting near Sumiyoshi's sleeping wife, holding their child and looking out into their garden. And Sumiyoshi apologizes to him for making him take care of his family when he's their guest. He tells him not to worry about it, also adding that he'll be leaving soon and that he can't keep eating meals for free like that. Sumiyoshi says that it's totally fine since he owes him his life, and when the man doesn't reply, he adds that he can at least tell his story since he has no successor at hand. The man tells him that there's no need, as masters of their craft will always find their way to the same place. He also says that Sumiyoshi shouldn't see him as some kind of special man, because that's what he's not. He says that he couldn't protect a single thing that was worth anything to him, and that he's a man of no worth, to which Sumiyoshi thinks in his head that the man shouldn't think of himself like that. Tanjiro finally awakens from the coma he was in due to injuries at Gyutaro and Daki's hands, and is met by a shocked Kanao, who drops the vase she was holding and rushes to his side, asking him if he's okay. Kanao explains to him that he was unconscious for a whole 2 months, and smiles as she says that she's so glad that he's finally awake. Goto enters the room with the castella he brought over, and Tanjiro thanks him, which greatly shocks the Kakushi, who then yells to Kanao that she should have told someone Tanjiro was finally awake, before also yelling the news to Kiyo Terauchi, Naho Takeda, and Sumi Nakahara. The three come rushing over, cheering and crying, glad that Tanjiro is finally awake, and Aoi Kanzaki joins them shortly after, expressing her guilt and gratitude to Tanjiro for going to the red light district in her place. Tanjiro asks them how everyone else is doing, to which Sumi and Goto reply that Zenitsu had awoken the day after the incident and had gone back on the job 2 days ago, and Tengen had made it back without any help from the Kakushi, just with the support of his wives. Tanjiro expresses his gladness that they're okay, and asks how Inosuke's doing. Sumi and Aoi explain that Inosuke was very close to death at one point due to his bleeding and the poison circulating around his body, and Tanjiro says that he must be hallucinating the boar-headed demon slayer on the ceiling of the room then. Everyone looks up, realizing that Inosuke is indeed there, as he jumps down and lands at the end of Tanjiro's bed, saying he's impressed Tanjiro noticed him and boasting that he woke up a whole 7 days before he did. As Inosuke continues ranting at him, Kiyo shows Tanjiro a picture of a honey badger and says that Shinobu said Inosuke was just like it, since he's nearly impossible to kill. Inosuke exclaims that he's immortal, but Goto says he's just a moron, which stirs up commotion in the room with the former trying to attack the latter as Aoi attempts to hold him back. As they continue to argue, Kanao tries to tell them to be quiet, but they ignore her until she raises her voice and shouts that Tanjiro has fallen back asleep, so they should let him sleep peacefully. A week passes and Tanjiro makes a full recovery. He asks Naho if he got a new sword as he chipped his old one, and Kiyo shows him a number of letters Hotaru sent him that tell Tanjiro to die and that he hates him, saying that he has no sword for him. Tanjiro expresses his guilt at having Hotaru make him so many swords, since he keeps breaking them, but Sumi says that demon slayers break their swords all the time, so it's probably Hotaru's fault for taking offense to that. Kiyo suggests that he go to the Swordsmith Village to talk things out with Hotaru in person. Tanjiro arrives at the village only to find out that Hotaru's gone missing. He also finds out that Hotaru is Hagenetsuga's full name, which he finds cute. The village people instead guide him towards a spring located by the village where Tanjiro runs into Mitsuri and Genya. In the forest, he also runs into the Mist Hashira, Muichiro, who's bullying a kid, which Tanjiro goes to stop. He tries to lecture the Hashira, but Muichiro tells him that a Hashira's time is important and goes off doing whatever business he had to do. The kid tells Tanjiro that Muichiro wanted keys to a mechanical doll for training. The kid introduces himself as Kotetsu, and they continue to watch as Muichiro trains against the doll. Kotetsu reveals that the doll was created back in the Sengoku period by his ancestors. As they watch, they see that Muichiro defeats the doll and breaks its armor. Kotetsu's stunned, hoping that the doll would have held up. Afterwards, the Hashira tells him that he's broken his blade and goes on to take one of the blades the doll holds. Tanjiro comforts the child and tries to assure him that the doll will still move, and when it does, Kotetsu exclaims that it's now Tanjiro's turn to train so he can get more powerful than Muichiro. Kotetsu shows Tanjiro that you can adjust the way the doll moves by adjusting parts of its body, kinda like a puzzle box. Tanjiro spars with the doll, and with his iron will and hard head, manages to defeat it. Out of nowhere, a buff man approaches the two, and it's revealed to be Hagenezka, coming back from his training in the mountains. Tanjiro takes the sword from the doll, and Hagenezka says that he'll deal with the rust. The next day, Tanjiro speaks with Muichiro, as both of them want to meet up with their respective swordsmiths. Suddenly, one of the upper moons happens upon the room. Muichiro and Tanjiro ready their battle stances, and Muichiro doesn't delay in attacking the demon. The demon's head comes right off, only for it to grow an entirely new body from it. Now, with two bodies, the demon uses its staff to blow the demon slayers away. However, Genya, perched right above the two demons, shoots them both, separating their bodies from head once more. Tanjiro realizes that it's exactly what the two want to happen, and even more bodies split off. Tanjiro continues his fight in the forest and realizes that, even if they're split off, the more they do beyond a certain point, the weaker the demons get. He continues to slice and dice to weaken his opponent's strength as he makes his way back to where Nezuko and Genya are fighting the rest. When he arrives, he's attacked by another one of the demons and is saved by Nezuko. However, another one of his clones attacks from above and knocks the two out of commission. While Tanjiro's unconscious, Muichiro is busy dealing with another upper moon, Gyoko. Tanjiro comes to and finds that Nezuko is running away with him on her back. As they make their escape, the demons cut down the building, causing it to collapse on Nezuko. As Tanjiro tries to help Nezuko, she touches his sword, causing the sword to ignite into a bright red blade, similar to the one from his fight with Rui. With this blade, combined with the dance of the fire god, Tanjiro cuts down 3 of the 5 demon clones. Genya, who they find close by, cuts down the 4th, with the 5th still missing. The two hunt down the 5th, who they find has shrunk into a tiny form. Genya goes in for the kill, but is about to be attacked from behind. Tanjiro jumps in and saves Genya, while the latter protects Tanjiro from a lethal blow from the demon. He gives Tanjiro the chance to defeat the demon, whom Tanjiro delivers with the swing of his sword. However, a 6th, more powerful clone appears. While Muichiro's dealing with Gyoko, Mitsuri comes to the rescue of Tanjiro, Genya, and Nezuko. She easily cuts through the attack by the 6th demon and continues their fight. Meanwhile, the other 3 try finding the tiny demon who keeps running away. They manage to catch up with the demon, who transforms and attacks Tanjiro. However, with his power, he manages to cut the demon down. But something's strange. Despite having cut him down, the demon still stands, and they find out that it's the wrong clone. The real demon is hiding within the body of the demon they had just cut down. But the sun is soon rising, meaning that Nezuko has to be shielded from the sun. And so Tanjiro desperately tries to shield Nezuko from the sun. Unable to multitask, and not losing this chance to slice an upper moon, he lets go of Nezuko and slices the beast down once and for all. Afterwards, he takes a moment to absorb what he'd just done. Surprisingly, Nezuko is okay, even in the sunlight. Much to everyone's surprise, she even talks now. And with that, Tanjiro, completely exhausted, has Nezuko carry him on her back. Hashira Training Arc. Tanjiro wakes up after being knocked out cold for 7 days and is met by Hagenezka, who has delivered the blade he was fixing for Tanjiro, complete with Kyojuro's guard and the character Metsu for destruction. Tanjiro participates in the Hashira training program with the rest of the Demon Slayers. He completes every course with the exception of the course run by the Wind Hashira, as he's banned for attacking him in defense of Genya. Infinity Castle Arc. The Hashira rush the Ubuyashiki estate, and Sanemi is the first one to see the mansion and feels relieved, believing that he'll make it just in time. However, the mansion suddenly blows up in a huge explosion, with all the nearby Demon Slayers witnessing it in shock. Even Muzan, with his skin burned off and his left eyeball entirely exposed, is surprised at this, as Kaya had looked calm, with a serene smile as he, along with his family, blew themselves up. In order to delay Muzan's regeneration, he made the explosion deadlier by adding spike traps, and while Muzan was busy trying to heal himself, he was again attacked and immobilized by a blood demon art which summoned spikes in the area. Due to the spikes piercing his flesh, Muzan tried to absorb them to escape, but out of nowhere, Tamayo appears and stabs Muzan with a special medicine she had concocted. However, Muzan absorbs her entire arm as she does so. Suddenly, Gyome Himejima arrives and cleaves Muzan's head clean off, though the demon is able to regenerate. Soon, the other Hashira also arrive, and Gyome tells them that the one he's fighting is Muzan, and that he won't die even if his head's cut off. The Hashira, given that it was their first time seeing him, were shocked at first, but proceed to attack him with their respective breathing styles, including Tanjiro Kamado, who was with Gyo Tomioka when the explosion occurred. They attack Muzan from all sides, but before they're able to land even a single blow, they're all transported into the Infinity Castle and are separated. While falling, Muzan mocks the Demon Slayers and proclaims that he'll slaughter them all throughout the night. Tanjiro rebutes that it would be Muzan who would be going to hell that night, and that he himself will defeat him. Muzan dares Tanjiro to come and get him if he can, as the Demon Slayer's decisive battle against Muzan and his forces is about to commence. Sunrise Countdown Arc. After several casualties from both the Demon Slayer Corps and the Upper Moons, Muzan is finally defeated. However, as a parting gift, Muzan manages to turn Tanjiro into a demon and transfer all of his emotions into him. Tanjiro, now a demon, starts to attack the other Demon Slayers, prompting Gyu to attack Tanjiro in order to stop him. Inosuke rushes up to Tanjiro, pledging to stop him from his rampage, but after a flashback, he's unable to bring himself to hurt Tanjiro, and Tanjiro reaches out his hand at Inosuke, threatening to attack. Everybody tries their best to stop Tanjiro. Nezuko, Gyu, and even Kanao do their best. Tanjiro, now within his own mind, converses with Muzan. The latter tries to take control, however Tanjiro's will, along with the inner voices of his friends, pulls him out of the demonic abyss. At one point he was lost, and now he awakens to a crying Nezuko in front of him, and a crying and exhausted Kanao. In victory, they celebrate. Decades later, we would meet the descendants of several of these Demon Slayers, including those from Tanjiro and Kanao, Zenitsu and Nezuko, and many, many more, as they live their lives in modern Japan, all thanks to the acts of their ancestors. Did you enjoy our video? Be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.